Hello everyone and welcome. Dawn here. I'm so glad you could join me. Before I start on some Christmas cards that I'll be doing, I wanted to sneak in one more Halloween card. I'm making a quick and easy card using some awesome new pattern paper that I got from Whimsy Stamps. It's called the Haunted Pattern Paper. This particular pack is double-sided, so you can use either side of the paper. I'm going to use this paper right here, and check out the other side of it. The pumpkin is totally awesome. I want you to see all the different patterns that you get with this pack. I love the fact that you can use both sides of the paper. However, the bad news is all the papers are super nice, and it's definitely going to be hard to decide which side to use. It's going to kill me not to use both sides of the paper, but that's because I have a thing for pattern paper. I have to tell you though, I think I might like this paper pack better than the Nevermore paper pack. This one has such great sceneries, my mind is already trying to decide what to make with them, but I guess I'll have to wait till next year. I'm pairing it up with the Dracula's Coffin die set and the Dracula Going Batty die set. So let's get started. The first thing I did was cut a piece of white cardstock to 10 by 7 and I scored it at 5 inches, and then I trimmed it down to 5 by 6.5 because the pattern paper I have is only 6 by 6 and the 7-inch would have just looked too big. You can still put it in a 5 by 7 envelope though, it'll fit just fine. Then I cut a piece of black cardstock just slightly smaller than the card base to make a black border, which will also take away from the fact that the pattern paper is a little smaller. Then I trimmed the pattern paper down to 4 3/4 by 6 inches. I make sure to take some off of the left and the right side, but I don't take any off of the top or the bottom because I don't want it to be smaller than the 6 inches. Next, I die cut 3 of the tombstones from Dracula's Coffin die set. I did 1 big one and 2 small ones, and then I die cut 2 of the skulls and 2 of the crossbones. I die cut the Dracula from some black cardstock, and later in the video I did go back and die cut another Dracula from gray cardstock so I can make it look like he has a shadow. I also die cut some of the bats from black cardstock as well. Now I'm going to ink blend my tombstones and I'm going to adhere my 2 skull and crossbones together. I got these new glue bottles with a fine tip on them and I'm just loving them. It's a smaller bottle than what I'm used to, so it kind of feels a little weird to be being so tiny, but they're really nice to get into small places, and if I only want to put a small amount of glue on something, it really works really well. I'm using my favorite Distress Oxide inks, Black Soot and Hickory Smoke, to ink blend my tombstones. I chose to use white cardstock because I want to leave the middle of the tombstones very light so it draws your eye to it when it's on the card. What I'm doing here is I'm going around all the edges of the 3 tombstones with the Hickory Smoke color. And I'm being pretty generous with it because I want the outer edges to be kind of on the darker side, and the ink will lighten up when it does dry. I also color the skull and crossbones with the Hickory Smoke as well. Once I cover the tombstones with the Hickory Smoke, I bring in the Black Soot and I go around all the edges with it. Again, I'm being very generous with it so it looks kind of dark on the edges. I also color the skull and crossbones with the Black Soot as well, but I don't put a lot on them at this point. I continue to ink blend my tombstones until I have the desired look that I want on them, and I'm not taking any care at all, as you could see, because it's an old tombstone. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now, at this point, I decided my skull and crossbones I wanted them to be even darker than they were. So I'm putting some black dye ink on them. This goes on darker and it will stay darker than the Black Soot. And I really liked how the skull and crossbones came out, so I decided to go around all the edges of the tombstones with the black dye ink as well, to give it a more defined and darker edge, and I really loved how it came out. I don't usually use the dye ink for the edges, but I actually might do this more often because I really think it added to the look of the tombstone. I'm going to take my black Jelly Roll pen and I'm going to write R.I.P. Rest in Peace on the 2 smaller tombstones. I usually do not write on my cards because I am super nervous about messing up and having to start over. But for this particular thing, being it's an old tombstone, I really don't care how they came out. It can be uneven or even different sizes. I'm not looking for perfection with this. Actually, I think it would probably add to the character of the tombstone if it was messed up. You don't have to use a Jelly Roll pen. You can stamp on it if you have a stamp set, or you can use a black Sharpie as well. I adhere the skull and crossbones to the big tombstone. And I love how the middle of the tombstone is so light. It really makes the skull and crossbones stand out, I think. Now, I want them to also look kind of old and weathered. So I take an eraser and I rub it very gently over the skull and crossbones to take a little bit of the black ink off of it. You don't have to do this part if you don't want to, but I think it adds to the look of it. Now let's start assembling the card. I have a black Dracula and a gray Dracula. I'm going to adhere the black one on top of the gray one, and I'm going to offset it so it looks like it's a shadow behind him. I thought that would look really nice, and the gray would go with the colors of the tombstone. And then I'm just going to adhere the Dracula directly to the card so he looks like he's creeping around. And then I adhere the big tombstone onto the card with some foam tape to give it dimension. And then I double up on the foam tape so that the 2 smaller tombstones are raised higher up in front of the big one. And I place them so it looks like Dracula is creeping behind the tombstones. I couldn't decide on how many bats I wanted to have on the card, so I went another route and I die cut the tree branch instead that looks like bats are hanging from it because I felt like the sky needed something. And then I adhere it to the card, and I adhered 2 of the bats to look like they're flying in the sky. And I used my white Jelly Roll pen to give the bats and Dracula's eyes. I adhere the pattern paper to the black cardstock. See, it's going to kill me to cover up that pumpkin because I just loved that picture. And if you want, you can die cut some of the words out of the black cardstock. I was rushing, so I didn't think of it at the time, or I would have done that. Then to finish off the card, I adhere the pattern paper to the white card base. I decided not to add a sentiment to this card because I didn't want to take away from the scenery. This card was super quick and easy to make, and I just love how it turned out. And that's going to complete my card for today. I would love for you to leave a comment below and let me know what you think of the card. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any new content coming out. As always, thank you for stopping by and spending your time with me, and have yourself a wonderful day.